Welcome to the Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learned to grow our businesses, make more money, and live every day like it's Friday. And welcome back to another Friday Habit. Wherever you are in the week, wherever you're listening to this, I hope you're doing fantastic. Well, I'm excited for today's guest. Ben's not with us today, but I'm excited for today's guest because he went from tiny cubicles to leading tens of thousands of employees at some of the biggest companies in the world to embark on his life's mission, cultivating and inspiring a world of we-oriented leaders. So I have the pleasure of welcoming Kyle McDowell to the podcast. Kyle, welcome to the Friday Habit.
Hey, Mark, man, it's great to be here. I've been looking forward to this one. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure. Well, listen, I would love to hear a little bit about your journey because I feel like a lot of times people feel disconnected or they feel like they can't be empowered or that someone else has a special magical story that makes them more qualified than the next person. And a lot of times when we just hear the stories of those who are taking action, who are standing up, who are making a difference, we realize that, hey, they're not so different from us. And then it gives us that empowerment and excitement to go out and try and make a difference as well. So I would love to kind of hear about that cubicle and how you moved from there to leading thousands of people.
You know, it was a long journey. But I love the way you kicked that off because you hinted at something, at least in my world, I refer to as our leadership legacy. And those are two words that are not used very often together because we reserve legacy for guys like Tom Brady, you know, people that are in the spotlight. We don't think we have the chops or the ability or whatever the term, the limiting beliefs that take over for so many of us. It really stunts our ability to have an impact that we wanted to have. And I was no different. I started, you mentioned a tiny cubicle, and that's true. I began my career in a very small cubicle. As a matter of fact, I applied for the job. It was with a regional bank here in Florida. I applied when I was 17, knowing that I couldn't work there until I was 18, and I had rolled the dice that I would get the interview after my 18th birthday, or at least get the job offer after my 18th birthday, and it worked out. So I think I interviewed in June. My birthday was in July, and my first day in that cubicle was August 16th, 1993. It all started.
Nice. What bank was it?
It's a no longer, they don't exist anymore. Barnett Bank.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I worked at a bank that no longer exists anymore either. I worked at a bank called Commercial Federal, and they got bought by Bank of the West, and then they got bought by BMO. So, you know, it's just
same thing happened. Yeah. So Barnett was picked up by Nations Bank, who was then acquired by Bank of America.
Oh, okay.
So,
nice.
Yeah, man. So I started, and I remember that small cubicle so vividly. And, you know, a lot happened between that first day and 28 years later when I ultimately left the corporate life to take on what I'm now calling the second chapter of my career. But between that first day back in 1993 and when I exited in 2019, I found myself taking on bigger and bigger roles. And man, I had everything that I set out to have. By most standards, I had a air quotes, wildly successful career. I led tens of thousands of employees. I had the fancy titles. I had really cool corner offices in multiple locations. You know, the kind of office where you have your own conference room connected, or you have like a couch, like
a bathroom, maybe.
Yeah, dude, I had it all. And I led tens of thousands of people. For some context, my last two roles combined, I led north of 30,000 employees. Wow. I was responsible for profit and loss statements into the tens of billions of dollars. But man,
wait. So real quick, one question I have for you, because going from the cubicle, you said you started right after high school, joining a bank, and then you just worked for all those years, just kind of climbing the corporate ladder. Did you end up going to college? Like, what was some of that stuff?
Yeah. Well, so interestingly enough, I did. I went to my undergrad is in mass communications. I wanted to be in the news. I wanted to be a newscaster. And when I graduated, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was about to face a really rude awakening, and that was the money I was making at the bank to pay my way through school dwarfed the starting salary of a freshly graduated news person. Right. So I liked my standard of living, even though it was only my undergrad. I was in college. I mean, I lived a very, very kind of frugal lifestyle, but I couldn't imagine moving to some really rural area in the country, because that's how you usually get your start in that space.
Right.
And take a pay cut. That was something that just really didn't sit well with me. So, and at this point, I'd started leadership roles. So I was a supervisor in a call center, and I just took on bigger and bigger roles. But what is really, I think, the highlight or the theme of this story, with each passing year, I found myself losing the passion. I found myself losing the desire to make an impact. Because, Mark, I believe every single one of us, regardless of from where we come, regardless of industry, regardless of just about anything, we enter the workforce with hopes of making an impact. We enter the workforce, right? We want to do big things. And I was no different. But with each year, I became more apathetic to the whole thing, the whole engine. And what's ironic is I started to really loathe the very environments that I actually created. So it got to the point where around, I guess it was 2017 or so, where my health was suffering, a marriage was on the rocks and was about to end. And I just felt like there was more for me. So I left. I got out of corporate America. With really no plan. I didn't know what I was going to do next.
Did you find that, like, throughout those years, your drive was superficial in the sense? I just recently wrote a post on LinkedIn just about how in life we so focus on money and cars and houses and getting bigger and better things. And each time we level those things up, it requires more of our time and more of us to neglect the things that really matter in life, like friendships and relationships and family. And that a lot of times you hear old people who are in their 70s, 80s, 90s, that they're just saying, like, well, if I could tell my younger self something, I would tell them to not focus so much on the money or focus so much on getting the bigger and better thing, but really focus on going deep in relationships and developing those friendships, so that when I am in my twilight years, that I have just rich, healthy relationships and family connections and stuff like that. Did you find that throughout those years you were focusing on those superficial things? And I mean, it sounds like it was kind of destroying your life in some way.
You could not be more spot on. I wanted to make money to buy things I didn't need. I wanted the success, air quotes, in the title, in the status, to impress people that I didn't even know. And to impress those. And by the way, to assert my authority. So for the first 20-ish years of my career, I was a boss. I was not a leader. I was a manager. I banged my fist on the desk. I always delivered great results. There was never a question whether or not I was going to deliver. But the question that I should have been asking was, at what cost? Because when you lead organizations the size that I led, your jokes are always the funniest. People go out of their way to get a few minutes with you.
You always have the best ideas.
That's always. and you have a collection of people around you reminding you that your ideas are the best, when in reality, it's all bullshit. A lot of it, I should say, not all. So yeah, I did. I was focused on the superficial things, my growth, my development, my success. And everything that stood in the way of those things was for me to overcome, including missing out on really, really valuable relationships. There's an equation I'll share with you that I only uncovered for myself in the last maybe year or so. It's that the first 20 plus years of my career, I've managed to stay in touch on a regular basis with essentially one, maybe two people. Wow. The last 5 to 7 years of my career, I have managed to stay in touch with probably a dozen people, so much so that I still have regularly scheduled one-on-ones with some members of my old teams, because the impact they had on me is so profound. And then the impact that I'm having on them, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship, I think speaks volumes for the transition and transformation that I made. Because I went to great lengths to make myself the most I could be. But then this epiphany hit me, and I realized my investment in my own growth should take a backseat to my investment in those around me.
You said 2017 was kind of like what was it in your life? You said your marriage was falling apart. You said that you had all the things and all the accolades, but was there like an emptiness or something that drove you to say there's got to be more to life? And then what was that journey to figure that out? I mean, wasn't there a fear? I mean, weren't you afraid to like leave your job and all this success you've built? And like, how did you take that leap?
It was terrifying. It was terrifying. I did it twice. The first time was around the 2017 timeframe that I mentioned. I had enough, man. The duplicity that I saw inside of organizations, the toxicity, just the dysfunction. I mean, I got so tired of just the corporate buzzword bingo where like, we don't even speak the same. We don't even talk the same in the workplace that the way that we do at home with our friends and family. Like you don't go home and ask your significant other about their deliverables from the night before. You just don't, right? So it felt so hollow and inauthentic to me that I stepped away, and I decided, I didn't have a plan, but I just knew, I knew the way my health was trending and the marriage that was about to end, that I needed to do something different. So I stepped away, but it didn't last long. I gave myself kind of this contract. And when I left, I said, I told myself, and no one else actually, if I was to be given an opportunity where I could join an organization where I could lead in a way that I've never led, be almost completely autonomous in terms of driving a transformation, that would be the only circumstances under which I would go back into the big corporate world. And I think I was out of work for about 11 days, and I got this phone call. And the job was to lead 15,000 people in, I'm pretty sure it's the largest health insurance enrollment function in the country, if not the world. Wow. Had 11 locations. It was a $7 billion contract that I oversaw. Okay. And then that set me up for what was going to be, or ultimately became, an epiphany, Mark, that I never saw coming. And this epiphany changed my life. And I can say with the most sincerity and humility, my epiphany has also changed the lives of several thousands of people as well. So here's the epiphany. I was about 60 days into this new role, and I had learned all the ins and outs of the dysfunction that I was warned of. And I made the decision to pull the top 40 or 50 leaders of this team, this organization, together, because I needed to meet them, and I had met many of them, and I wanted them to hear firsthand from me what the road ahead would entail. So the night before I was going to meet with this group, I was terrified. I knew this was the scenario I'd asked for, but in a classic, like, be careful what you wish for moment, now that it's here, what the hell are you going to do? For whatever reason, I do give myself a little bit of credit. I was smart enough to realize, and I'm not that smart, but in that moment, I was smart enough to realize that the team of direct reports, the group that would report directly to me, their average tenure was north of 10 years. And the fella in the role before me had been dismissed, and I believe the woman in the role before him was also dismissed. So they had seen people come and go. They had seen the shiny shoes and starched shirt that I was wearing. They had seen and heard all these corporate cliches of what I was going to do, the person in my role was going to do. So
we need more synergy.
Synergy, baby. And bring your flair, too. Bring your flair.
That's right.
So, dude, the night before, I was in a hotel room, and I said, well, I better put some slides together so these guys know what to expect from me. And with no planning at all, and really no kind of end in mind, and about 2 hours elapsed, I was staring at my laptop that had 10 sentences only on this PowerPoint, and each sentence began with the word "we," because I really believed this team needed to hear the importance of what we could do together, remind them of the passion that they also once had that seemed to have been waning, or at least was diluted versus what it was when they first started. So I stepped out the next morning and I said, these are the 10 we's, you guys. And I want to be really explicit and clear about this. These are the rules by which I will hold you accountable. or to which I will hold you accountable. And I said it very straight faced. By the way, the entire presentation was in black and white on purpose because none of this is going to be negotiable. And I'm comfortable being that adamant because I am expecting you to hold me accountable to them as well. And if you don't, I will call you out for not calling me out. And I said, and I'll never forget this, because there were faces in the crowd that looked at me like I was crazy. I said, if I behave in a way contrary to any one of these principles, I want you to grab me by the ear and say, dude, you're not doing it. And, fast forward a number of years later, I haven't worked there at this firm since 2019. The 10 We's are still the cultural manifesto for that organization. They have the 10 We Awards a couple of times a year. Their performance appraisals all are wrapped around the 10 We's. Are you living those We's? And that was the beginning of a real transformative time for me, because it's what compelled me to write my USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestseller. And it's what fuels this chapter 2 of mine, going around the country, evangelizing the value of principle-based leadership, especially with the we orientation, and just trying to make a difference and bring back some of the core behaviors that have been either minimized or thrown out the window altogether in so many environments. And that's the mission that I'm on, because I've seen it done. It's not academic. It's not hypothetical. I've seen it done. And the reward that comes with it, dude, is so incredibly profound. I feel like it's an obligation for me to do this.
Yeah, I bet. What do you think it is with leaders? Like, how come more leaders don't embrace, that kind of ideology? Or why does it seem that, I mean, you kind of got to a place, right, where you were in charge, and is it a complacency? Is it a fear of, like, not wanting to look like you have it all together or know everything?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think it is that leaders get stuck in, or that they start to lack self-awareness?
Great observation, by the way. I think it's a combination of two things. And I was a victim of this, so I think I can speak to this. First is ego. We have this mindset, many of us, most of us, that I excelled at this role, and now I'm being put into a position of authority. I'm a boss now. And my ego says, I got to have all the answers because they put me in this position. I need to know everything. I can't let my team know that I'm not good at this, or I don't know that. I need to look and feel superior, which is garbage. That's element one. And then element two, I think, is much more pervasive in that. Well, let me give you the example, Mark. So you and I are on a team. We're on a team of 10, and we've got a boss. We'll call our boss Jim. You and I don't care much for Jim. He's not a guy that we would decide to have drinks with, or even have dinner with, or share lunch with. If we can avoid it, we would. Now, we also know his jokes are very funny, so we're going to laugh at his jokes and tell him how smart he is. But Jim has played the game so well, he's gotten promoted to a bigger position, and he is now tasked with the responsibility of hiring his backfill. Well, it's in our DNA to behave in ways that almost, if not entirely, replicate Jim's behavior, because we're trying to endear ourselves to him. So if Jim is this guy that you and I, to whom we cannot relate at all, we don't really think that highly of him. We don't trust him. We think he's kind of out for his own, not for our best interests. I need to endear myself to this guy to get the job. So you and I apply, we raise our hands, and it turns out whoever of the two of us can do a better job convincing Jim that we will be what he needs, instead of we will be our best selves, the best leader we can be. So he hires us, and now my ego is a challenge because I have to be smart and know everything, and I got to behave in the way that this guy who I loathed prior to having this role, I have to continue to replicate that behavior because I need to continue to endear myself to him. And so it goes. The cycle repeats until someone steps in the middle of all this and says, enough. We don't need to lead this way. And that's the role I'm playing today.
That's awesome. Who are some leaders that you look up to, or people out there in the sphere who you think are doing it right?
So I get that question a lot, and I almost always go to the same man because I happen to know him well. And it's he's been out of the corporate spotlight for a long time, but there's a guy named Harry Kramer, Kraemer. He's now a professor at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern, where I met him. He was a former chairman and CEO of Baxter International. It was a multi-billion-dollar firm. I think he had 50-something thousand employees under his watch. And there's a story that I think highlights who Harry is, and I tell the story in my book. During his time as CEO, Baxter, who makes a number of medical devices, made a product that resulted in the death of, it killed 53 patients. And this is well chronicled. It's not just because I know him, but it's well chronicled if you were to search the internet for it. Unlike the way many companies and many corporate executives would handle this, Harry got in front of it saying, we blew it. He allowed the research to play out. He put together a task force to determine what it is that drove these deaths, because they weren't sure at first. And in a well-documented conversation, when they got to the bottom of the issue, the leader of that task force called Harry and said, we figured it out. It's our bad. We're to blame. And not his words, but the other person's account was Harry's response was, well, let's just make sure we do the right thing. And for him, doing the right thing was he visited the family of some of the deceased. He took a pay cut. He ensured that other members of his team took pay cuts. And he never walked away or shied away from it. And I know this man on a personal level now and can tell you it's who he is to his core. And he is someone that I absolutely admire, a big role model for me. He actually was kind enough to issue a blurb on the back of my book because my principles resonate with him as well. But he's a guy, I'm telling you, man, if you're ever in search of a leader's leader, someone that you can absolutely get behind, it's Harry Kramer. He is a really, really special man.
Wow. So it sounds like one monocle of a good leader is accepting responsibility and taking ownership for your failures.
So I have 10 principles, Mark, the 10 ways, right? And one of them is
that is one of the we's.
We own our mistakes. We own our mistakes. It's one of my favorites. It's so underappreciated in some environments because, when you raise your hand and say you made a mistake, it's usually going to get slapped, or it's going to get pushed down, or it's going to get, worst case, you're going to be asked to go do something else for a living. But mistakes are really opportunities to get better. We know what not to do going forward. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want your audience to hear, we accept mistakes that are made out of malice. There's usually two types of mistakes. One that's just careless, and one that was just premeditated or just a lack of effort, which is different than careless in my mind. But in either case, the team and those around you need to be in a place where folks are comfortable to raise their hand to say they made a mistake. The boss isn't going to beat them over the head with it. As a matter of fact, another one of the principles, the one that comes right after we own our mistakes, is we pick each other up. So when someone on the team does stumble or they make one of those mistakes, they know that they're going to have someone next to them with their hand extended, especially the boss, to say, listen, man, I get it. Because I tell you what, I'm going to ask you this, Mark, because I'll throw it back to you. I've come to the conclusion that most people don't judge others by the mistakes they make. I happen to judge people by how quickly they remedy the mistake and if they repeat the mistake. And I mean, what do you think? So let's just make up a scenario where you've got a business relationship and you're expecting something to be delivered on a specific date and time. It didn't show up. You make a phone call and they say, holy cow, Mark, we blew it. We're going to courier something. We'll have it there this afternoon or next thing this morning. You can tell they moved heaven and earth to fix that problem. What's your reaction to that relationship now?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it builds trust.
Yeah.
We have a lot of contractors, and there's moments where we're the go-between for a client and we have a deadline and we're trying to get things done. And so we work with a lot of different people. And so, it's like if I have a contractor or even one of my employees or whatever it might be, and they come to me and they don't make excuses, but they take ownership and then they give me a solution, that one helps me respect them more. And it also helps me build trust with them, knowing that, they're going to make an effort to make a difference and try harder. And they know the expectation of excellence that we're all trying to live up to. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think I wish more people thought about that or, took that into account, when it comes to someone's character. It's like if you take ownership of something, and that's one of the things I always try to do here. We always are trying to say, if something goes wrong, I understand there can be excuses. I understand that you can say, well, this happened and this happened. But for me, it's like, well, I don't want to hear the excuses because the problem's already happened. And so at this point, we don't need to make excuses. We need to make solutions.
Yep.
And so let's talk about the solutions and how we can move forward and make things right and make things better. And so, yeah, I'm all about that.
Love it. Love it. I always say, we're not judged by our mistakes. We're judged by how quickly we remedy and if we repeat them. And you can't encourage employees enough to do that, or team members enough to do that, if they don't feel as if you're going to be there to pick them up. So to me, owning mistakes and picking each other up, those two we's are really important to go hand in hand with one another, because it's all about the environment, right? Someone's got to create that environment of safety where, don't get me wrong, brother, we set our expectations and we hold people accountable. I don't mean to imply that we're not adamant and militant about hitting our deliverables. We are.
Right.
But also, if you want people to take action and find creative solutions and be innovative inside of your business, you have to expect mistakes and be okay with them.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's go through. I'd love if we could breeze through these 10 principles, maybe get people excited to get the book and learn more about it and engage with more of your content.
Yeah.
So we had your first principle here is we do the right thing always. That kind of goes into what we were talking about, making things right, doing things right.
Yeah.
Leading by example.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, obviously as a leader, that should be one thing that it's the do as I do, not, do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
Principle that a lot of us are familiar with.
Yep. Mark, I should, if I may jump in there, it's important to note, I am well aware that the first several of the 10 W's a lot of times elicit a response of, well, no shit. Of course we're going to do the right. Of course, Kyle, we're going to do the right thing. I get it. I get it. However, I've yet to find an organization that indexes on doing the right thing, or even comes close to over-indexing on doing the right thing. And it's kind of a mantra of theirs. I think mission statements are really powerful tools that organizations use to try to communicate how they behave and treat one another behind the scenes. But what they actually are is they send a message externally, who we are, for the things we want to be known. And rarely do they even hint at we're going to do the right thing. Now, the right thing is subjective. It can be, it can vary from time to time. And so in the book, I walk through some decision tools, I would say, to help people try to land on the right thing when facing a tough decision. But if that's number one, we do the right thing always. The very best way a leader can demonstrate that they are doing the right thing always is number two, as you mentioned, that's we lead by example. We're already leading by example. We are. We do it every single day. The question is, am I leading by an example that I would love to see replicated? If my mother were to see it, if a documentary crew were following me and saw me behave in a one-on-one or a team meeting, am I behaving in a way that I'm proud of? And that's going to make a difference for somebody. So that's number two. And leading by example is if you want to lead by example and you want to move the needle and drive fulfillment for folks on your team, that takes us to number three, and that's we take action. So sorry, I skipped one. Number three is we say what we're going to do and then we do it. Yep. So from a lead by example, I'm going to make my commitments and I'm going to keep those commitments to you. And it's my brand. I want people to know that when Kyle says something, it's going to happen. Now, there are times it won't happen, but in those instances, I'm going to be so far in front of it well before you expected the thing to happen that there are no surprises. And you mentioned this in a scenario earlier. You said you have a bunch of contractors and you rely on them to kind of get this, to hand over to that. Like there's this chain and these dominoes. And what I found to be so pervasive in corporate America is I'll say, hey, Mark, man, can you get me those finance numbers by Thursday? And you're like, yep, got it, Kyle. Thursday rolls around. Mark's like, well, I reached out to Sally in accounting and I still haven't gotten those back yet, as if Mark now gets a pass. Well, no, Mark, you committed to doing this and it's now deliverable day. It's D-Day and you don't have that. You have not lived up to our expectation of doing what we say and say what we do. You didn't do that. Which is a problem. But if you're going to do things and take and set these expectations and deliver on them, that's when number four comes into effect, and that's we take action. We take action. Listen, there's a company out there that I am certain that you have purchased from at some point in your life. And I'm certain most Americans have, and most people around the world have, and they have the slogan. And the slogan is not just go win. The slogan is not just be the best. The slogan is not just get out. It's just do it. And in the team environment, when I say we take action, I want folks to take action because being idle is not okay. Taking action and making a mistake, like trying to make us better, improve the employee experience or improve the customer experience. That's what I'm talking about. TSA, the Transportation Safety Administration, they have, if you see something, say something. Well, in a culture of excellence, which is what I'm trying to create, we have, if you see something, do something. It's ripe all over many businesses, right? You've got these problems in the corner. There's these hairy, ugly problems that people don't want to address because they're probably not incented to. And if they point out the problem, they're probably just going to be given more work, and they don't want to do that. So it creates this, like, if you see, don't ask, don't tell type thing with these problems. So, but there's no way people are going to take action and try to fix these problems if they think when they make a mistake, they're going to be beaten over the head with it. And that takes us to where we started this conversation, to we 5, and that's we own our mistakes. Yeah. Because they're gifts.
And we pick each other up.
That's right. Right. We got to pick each other up. Now, there are 2 elements to that one, right? So we pick each other up is about when someone stumbles, or perhaps, they're bringing baggage to the workplace because maybe they're going through a divorce. They've got a sick child, or maybe they've got a sick parent, life stuff. This stuff happens. And as a leader, I think it's our responsibility to pick those folks up, to help them, to have the conversation, recognize that, your performance is sliding. But before I go to disciplinary actions and before I start being critical and playing I got you, you need to know I got you. So what's going on? How can I help? But the second component to this one, I think, is just as profound, and that is lifting people to new heights. So if a member on the team expresses an interest to take on a bigger role, it's your job, it's your obligation to help get them there, including leaving your team, believe it or not. Because if the team member sees that I'm invested in them as the person, their growth, their journey, I want to see them do better, I want to see them take on bigger things, they're naturally going to work harder for you. So if you are in a position to pick someone up and make their existence or their journey or their growth or development better, you should do that. It's a human obligation to do that, man. So that's where that we comes in. We pick each other up. Now, when we move to we 7, it becomes a little less, as I say, unicorns and rainbows, and more kind of like, it can be a little controversial. And we number 7 is we measure ourselves by outcomes, not activity. Not activity. I've found especially in big companies, meetings take primacy over getting real work done. We have a meeting to talk about a meeting, and then we have a postmortem to debrief on the meeting we just had. And and there's this badge of honor that comes with being double and triple booked and having meetings scheduled throughout the entire day. I look at it this way. Activities are important, and they're a requirement for delivering the outcomes, but customers don't pay for those activities. My favorite example is, I'm really thrilled that my Uber driver picks me up with enough gas to get me from A to B, but I didn't pay for that stop of gas. I paid to get to A to B, from A to B, right? So similar inside the workplace for all of our roles. It's like if I'm mired in something, or if I'm working really hard on something, if I can't draw a line from that something to a deliverable or an obligation or an outcome that I've been assigned, I should question it. I should scrutinize it. I should ask myself, and then those around me, including my boss, why am I doing this? If it's not going to connect to an outcome that I've been assigned, it just doesn't make sense. But that's what happens, especially in big companies. We get mired in these projects or task force, and then they take on a life of their own. And then we're meeting so many times. How many times have you shown up to a meeting? It's like, what are we here to talk about? Right. So that's, and
that's the worst. I feel like there's so many times where it's like, let's get into a meeting and let's talk about things that we're going to do, but then never leave with any action items of what we do, what we're supposed to do next. And then let's have another meeting to follow up about, where things are. I'm like, what is going on here?
And invariably when you have the follow up, it's like, well, I thought you decided that. No, I thought, where did we land?
I emailed Tim, but I haven't heard back, so I'm waiting.
There you go. Where did we land on that? And that's, boy, in my business today, if you want to see me get fired up, tell me that. Tell me, well, I emailed so-and-so, or I scheduled something. Like, doesn't matter. Activity. I need outcomes. Which takes us to we number 8. And it's my favorite of all the principles. It's also the toughest for many organizations to really get behind for a lot of reasons, but it is we challenge each other. In most team environments, especially in corporate life, challenges are reserved for the boss. They are the only one to issue challenges. And that's not, math will tell you one person challenging a group of people is not the ideal equation, right? We need challenges to come from all angles, peers challenging peers, team members challenging the leader, because the best ideas always surface when people feel empowered to point out, an area of opportunity or something. Now, the rule to challenges, though, is very clear. Challenges must be grounded in either data or experience. Otherwise, it's just your opinion. And there's an inappropriate cliche that follows this about opinions and how we all have them. And that's how I feel challenges are separate and should be separate from opinions. You're not obliged to listen to someone's opinion if they want you to do something differently. But if you come to me with data or experience, like, Mark, you and I are about to launch this new podcast together, and we know the profile of the target audience, our personas. We know all these things. But if someone on our team says, hang on a second, I was with another media company and we took the exact same approach to our marketing and it failed miserably, we must listen to that person. Right? Yeah. We got to drop the ego and listen to it. Now, we number 8, we challenge each other, is the recipe for chaos without we number 9, which is we embrace challenge. In any environment, dude, if it's the chess team, if it's the soccer team, if it's the bowling team, we're going to face challenges. And to deny a challenge is really to deny an opportunity to get better at something, to improve, to venture away from mediocrity, to establish excellence. So I want my teams to be ready to face external market challenges. I want my teams to be ready to face challenges from our superiors inside the organization. Maybe they issue some number that we don't think we can hit, but we got to rally around and hit whatever target's been set for us. But to deny those challenges, it's like anything else in life, man. If you want to achieve something, anything worth having, essentially, you got to overcome a challenge or two. Yeah. And then that brings us to
it's interesting too. I think about that, like if leaders could start with these 2 principles almost, right? Like being willing to be held accountable as a leader, right? And to be pushed and challenged to say, hey, what are you doing to better yourself? Like who do you need to become in order to have the company that you want to have? Or who do you need to become to receive the responsibility to do bigger and better things? But a lot of times once you get to the top, then it's like, well, no one's holding you accountable and no one's challenging you to be better. And then you get stuck in that mediocrity, right? Where it's just like, you're just wanting to not rock the boat. You want to do things how they've always been done. And you just want to kind of fly under the radar and enjoy all that power. But great things don't come from that, Exactly. And then if leaders are like that, then it trickles down, and then employees become like that, and then they're just trying to do bare minimum just to get through the day so they can go live their lives or get to the weekend and not really make a difference or an impact in the companies that they're a part of. And then you become dissatisfied over several years and miserable. And then you try to go find the next thing that's going to inspire you or make you excited about getting up every day to go to your job.
That's right. That's right. Now, I must offer this. I am not naive to the fact that we all have commitments. So if you find yourself in a role similar to what you just described, Mark, in that, keep my head down, kind of not, stay off the radar, not ruffle any feathers, I understand. I get it, because, you've got to pay the bills and you've got commitments. And I will just tell you, as someone who went out on a limb to say, I'm going to do things a little bit differently. If I want something different, I need to do something different. The satisfaction and the sense of fulfillment is so much greater when you step outside of that comfort zone and lead in a way maybe that you've never been led. And for me, that was establishing these principles. And oh, by the way, here's the little secret that I don't think people take enough time to to explore, to find out on their own. When you start to shift your gaze away from the mirror, away from yourself and your own growth and, being the biggest and baddest person you can be, those are all important things. I'm talking about specifically in the workplace. When I shift my care and my focus away from my own growth into those around me, the secret is they do better, I do better, and the team does better. There's never a better example of a win-win-win, because now everyone involved is aligned around I call a culture of excellence. We align around our corporate, professional, and personal goals. And I think a lot of leaders miss that personal goal piece because they feel like it's not their responsibility because it's not professional, it's not corporate. And I just think if you care about the people that you are tasked with leading and they know it, it's authentic and relatable care, trust naturally ensues and the results follow. To me, it's an equation that is not often found, but when you do, you'll never let it go because it's so fulfilling to find.
Totally. And then
So,
our final one. What are we ending with here?
Yep. So the last we is intentionally the last we, because if it were any earlier in the 10, I think it's a recipe for disappointment and missed expectations. And that's we obsess over details. So think of it this way. I believe the level of obsession we put into the details of our work, and I mean like font size, I mean being on time to meetings, I mean creating value in ways that separates us from our competitors. Apple, for example, when's the last time you opened, this is a genuine question, when's the last time you opened a product from Apple?
I mean, this last fall when the new iPhone came out.
And what a sexy, fun experience. They're packaging, dude. They're packaging, right? That's the product.
When you pick off that little tiny, that little film.
Yep.
You peel the green to open up the box, and then you peel the film off. It's just everything about it. You're just like, ooh, I want more of this.
That experience is the product of engineers spending weeks and months at times, depending on the product, locked in a room to create an experience on the packaging and the opening of the packaging. So that's a level of obsession with details that it communicates in some ways right in your face, but in many ways subliminally that if the activity required to open this little box is so exciting, the package inside must be incredible. And it sets an expectation, right? On the flip side of that, I know I won't speak for you, but I've bought products off Amazon, for example, where the instruction manual has typos in it or bad grammar, right? I'm like, there's no care here. And that level of detail, man, it's what separates you from your competition at a macro level, but it's also what separates you from other people in the organization and other people that want to be in your organization, because you have set a standard that we're going to be really, really militant in policing the details that we oversee, the parts of the product they're really important. So that's the number 10 is we obsess over details.
Yeah, man, this is so fantastic.
Thank you.
Feel like we could just continue to talk and I want to have you back on the show sometime, and I want to talk about a lot of the other ideas and things that you're into. But I'm excited for your mission to change the world and change leaders, because it really starts with them. I mean, imagine the world that we lived in if leaders took ownership, and that if they took responsibility for all the things that went wrong in companies that killed people and that weren't good for society, how much better of a world we could make. So if we start with the people in charge, trying to inspire them to make a difference and to change the world, then it's just going to trickle down from there. And so, man, I just wish you the best on your endeavors and everything that you're doing.
Likewise,
I always
Mark.
like to leave people with, one thing that they can start next week. One thing that you would say, hey, as a leader, do X, Y, and Z, and this will help you on the path to grow your business, be a better person. What would that one thing be?
Self-reflection. What am I good at? What am I not good at? Try to surround yourself with people that are good at the things you're not good at. Be humble about the things you are good at. Because it's through that self-reflection you're able to control that ego and set aside the need to be right. So self-reflection is really key to be an effective leader.
I love that. And if people wanted to connect with you, if they wanted to hear more about what you're doing, if they wanted to follow your content, where's the best place for that to be?
Yeah, so the book we've obviously gone deep on, it's called Begin With We, 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. My website and my social handles are all the same, at Kyle McDowell Inc. The website's kylemcdowellinc.com. And I'm glad you asked that because I love engaging with followers and helping people on their journey, questions they might have, dilemmas they're facing. So I throw that out there. I ain't chasing followers. I'm chasing a movement. So I offer that for with the best of intentions for people to reach out and say hello.
Awesome. Kyle McDowell, everybody, thank you so much. And hey, thank you so much for being with us here on The Friday Habit. If you want more, go to thefridayhabit.com to find show notes for this episode. You can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. And at the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit system that'll show you how to set aside one full day each week to dedicate working on your business instead of in your business. Listen, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, and maybe a little comment. And if you want to ask us some questions or recommend a guest, you can email us at hello@thefridayhabit.com. And until next time, live every day like it's Friday.